Welcome back to Chris and Retro. A couple of quick announcements. This Sunday, let's try again, May 7th. Yeah, May 7th at 7 p.m. Blood and a Razor Wire TV has a great conversation with my fiance, Samantha Engelbrecht, on there. And we'll talk about some of her struggles. Sam really approaches this, I think, um, in a brave way. There's much of the subject matter is hard for her to say because she is on to a new life as doing some great things and really is a good example of how to make life move forward. But there's some stuff that people need to hear, especially when you're dealing out warning signs to young women. Her mission is definitely for those young women that follow along from behind her life, beyond just our kids. But she really wants to make sure that she's living a life of meaning for others that are around. This interview, I think, is going to go a long way to give her the exposure that she needs to do to be a voice for those that don't have a voice. So please check out that on Blood on a Razor Wire TV. On Thursday, the following Thursday, so a little less than a week away, the host of that show, Chad Marks, will be on my show here on Chris and Retro. We're going to be in the studio with Rockbox Recording and Productions, and we'll be dropping that episode. We had a great conversation. I think you'll enjoy it. Chad's perspective based on his life of 20 years incarcerated, and his life, his rehabilitation actually is really the focus of it all, and the lens that he sees things through, and the preventative measures that we can hopefully offer through the stories, through our own lives, the mistakes that we made. Tonight's video, I'm going to focus on something I think that all of us struggle with. Regardless if you come from some traumatic past, like Sam and Chad and myself, but if you're coming from a situation that wasn't so egregious, you didn't have a time where you caused yourself all kinds of problems that make headlines, we still struggle. And there's things that we want to move on from in life. And I think a lot of times we leave open doors that we don't realize we do. There's one lesson I've learned, and I think I learned this lesson probably more poignantly being in a relationship with somebody that's recovering from a different substance than I was, and was addicted for different reasons than I was. Her mental health conditions are a lot based on trauma. She speaks well of that, about how the impact that trauma has had on her life. Not speaks well of, but speaks impactfully about the impact that trauma has had on her life and what that's done around to addiction and why addiction became an attractive outlet for her. Hopelessness, all that stuff. And then once you're addicted, it really becomes the only option for you. I had similar situations where the circumstances that brought me to where I became an alcoholic were fear, procrastination, and controlling behavior. So those are manifestations. And as those things started to unravel me, and my world became out of my own control, I had to hide from it with alcohol. So we go through these stages, but we all have those things. So we all have these circumstances and behaviors and stuff that are hangups and hurts and things along those lines, that there is really no scale when we're talking about a human life and the better living that we're trying to make for ourselves each day. I'm going to talk about these burning bridges. These are outlets that we leave for ourselves. And if you're struggling with addiction, and you can't figure out why you keep having reoccurrences or relapses, a lot of us call it, check what you've left still in the toolbox. And I'm not talking about new tools. I'm talking about those things that you keep pulling out as options. What have you left in your toolbox that's still an option? This burning of bridges couldn't possibly be more important than it is relative to addiction and these people, places, and things that we still associate with that give us an out. It's incredibly dangerous. I think of heroin addiction, and in our city, there is a known area that you go. It's Joseph, Burbank. There's a street on Farbridge that people pick up behind a church. I mean, there's on the northeast side, there's that. On the northwest side, you got Lyle Avenue and Broad Street and some other problems that are over there. These are all areas that are known for drug population. That's where all the suburb people go pick up that stuff. That's where all the transit, where the high volume of drug transit goes through. We know where it goes through. So when you're in a recovery situation as an addict, you do not want to have that be an option to go back down there. But yet over and over and over again, you hear about these stories where people be 1, 2, 3, 4 years in recovery, and all of a sudden that becomes an option again. And I want to explore that a little bit and understand why. You would think with habits, as we call these, over time, as they become less habitual and your life takes on other habits and other behaviors and things that are more beneficial to you, you would think that going back down those streets would not be something that you would entertain, or going back into that bar, or hanging out with those friends, or keeping certain numbers in your phone, or holding on to certain mementos of people that you've lost in your life that may have been traumatic, things that are triggering to you to get yourself in a bad way. You would think that it would be easier over time to not implement those negative tools from our toolbox. But unless we make a conscious effort to burn those bridges and slam those doors shut on our past, and in our mind rigorously call that out as a problem and declare that you will burn that past and under no circumstances find yourself in those places again, it is shocking how much more how much more of an option they become as you get further and further away from your calamity. They don't feel as dangerous anymore because you now know that you have healthy tools and you feel like you must be a new creature and you're safer in those areas until that next traumatic event comes up or that next trigger comes up or a series of a bad season with health problems or whatever else. And now for some baffling reason, you find yourself right back there again on the exact same streets. And that hasn't changed. That circumstance is the exact same way it was. And it'll be the same way in decades from now because nothing's changing down there. So you know right where to go to pick up right where you left off. While this is a life and death conversation, I'm talking about living, period. I'm talking about a living conversation. How do we live better? Because you don't always die when you use drugs. You don't always die when you drink. You don't always go to jail. Although towards the end, I was starting to think that every time I drank, I did go to jail. But the fact is that it's not a one-to-one ratio. And we think we're being slick when we do it once and we're okay. But with most addiction, you toy with that stuff even a little bit. If you're experienced at it at all, you know you're lying to yourself to say that it is not going to head to the worst situation. It will be there. Addiction is like that. It doesn't have a pause button. It doesn't have a neutral. It's just once it starts rolling, you're going. It's a go or no go decision. And once you're in a season of sobriety, it's really important for you to get rid of these bridges and burn them to the ground. Now, the areas in our area, I wrote a piece, and it's actually on chrisandretro.com. I have a blog that I started when I was released from my last incarceration. It's called iBlock Chronicles. If you ever want to go out there and take a look, some of it's more poetic, some of it's more observational, but I don't write a lot on there these days. But what I do, I try to make sure it's got something that really meant something to me. And I wrote a piece out there called Burning Bridges. And it goes like this, and I'll explain where it comes from. But actually, I'll probably start with it up front. I wrote this piece because of Sam's struggle with her addiction. You know, she's had long seasons of sobriety in her life, and then it turns into seasons of use in her life. And as we were having these conversations one night a couple of years back, it just dawned on me how critically important it is that we declare that we're going to burn these bridges, man. I mean, find the gas, light it up, and walk away. And I'll try to explain a little bit why we don't, at least as my understanding from my own life. But I wrote this piece, and I hope you find it beneficial to your life. It's called Burning Bridges. Again, it's on chrisandretro.com under my iBlock Chronicles blog section. If I don't know you today, hang in there, kid. There's another path. There's another way. Burn your bridges to Joseph Avenue. Now, I named out Joseph Avenue because it's a real big drug trade for us in the Northeast side. Burn your bridges to Joseph Avenue. Stay away. Please hold tight. Just hold on. The dark night will pass on. It'll pass along. How many times will you fall on your knees at night, pray into the King to make this mess all right? Will your prayers ever change or cease altogether? Will you collapse weak from another disaster? Where is hope on these dark days? I can't seem to find it within. Turn around, open arms, change the seat you're in. Because light hides itself from you. I think I understand. Crying out for redemption, resurrection, for mind amputation again. And we really just want to, when we go back there, we either want to raise ourselves up or get rid of our mind altogether. And we want to be forgiven. We want to be resurrected, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. And then that's where the relapse comes, is because we just want to amputate our mind, and we do that through the substance. And then I say, if I don't know you today, hang in there, kid. There's another path. There is another way. These are 3 streets that are known in the area. Burn your bridges to Clinton. Burn your bridges to Farbridge. Burn your bridges to Joseph. Stay away. Stay away. Please hold tight. Just hold on, because this dark night will pass on. It'll pass away. It'll pass along. I did that because it was this emotion that was going over me around this whole idea, and really just wanting Sam to find peace with some of the things that she struggles with, but me find peace. What I noticed is over time, and these bridges don't get burnt, and I'm not saying with Sam, but I'm saying with all of us in our lives, when the bridges don't get burnt, it is so shocking that that they become the available option later. I was talking to somebody one time about a counselor actually about suicide, and um, suicide, if it's on your list, will always be the top of the list. So if you got 1,000 things on your list of available options in a bad situation, and you've had suicide remain on that list, even if it's number 1,000 in your healthier days, it'll become number one in your worst days. It's got to be removed. That bridge has to be burned. You have to find a way to move beyond suicidal ideation and find healthy ways to input in your brain when you're feeling those sorts of things. It's the same thing with these bridges. They can't be on your available list. These streets, those numbers, these people, past relationships, past behaviors, tendency to be angry at all things all the time. This is something I struggle with tremendously. As I feel like I'm more out of control, my anger overtakes me. Fear, if I'm more fearful, anger overtakes me. So we have to get to this place where we're not only burning the bridges, but also psychologically, we're removing these options from our toolbox or taking them off the available list, knowing full well, because we're weak people, generally speaking, as human beings, we have flaws. We are going to go to the thing that's going to make us feel the best, we think, in those moments. And oftentimes for us, it's substance use. If you're somebody like me that's in recovery, burning those bridges a lot of times comes into play when there's a fear. Why would we? So let's just say that we're coming on that high out of it. We're not high from the substance, but this pink cloud, so to speak, in recovery, or we're coming out of a bad season in life. At that point in time, you would think that all things go away. And of course, a lot of people, you see them delete drug dealers from their phone. You see them make great declarations about never going back. I'm never doing that again. It doesn't work for me now. I don't get high anymore anyway. That's a waste of money. There's no point in doing it. Why would I go back? But yet they find themselves back again with just a little Coke or a little Adderall, or just one time I used heroin. I just was snorting it. I wasn't using an IV. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're full blown back into it again with an overdose or multiple days and several $1,000s gone. So why in the good days do we not get rid of those things entirely? And I think it's because over time, it's still the known go-to. Everything else in our life that we now explore as people in recovery is all new. It's all brand new. And we generally, if you go into a room of people in recovery, many of them will attest that fear was a big driving factor to their addiction in the first place. So now we're having to find hope in rooms that are completely full of fear, completely full of unknown, especially if you've been an addict the vast majority of your life. That new room is something you've never known. And therein lies the massive importance of community and people around you. Many organizations call it a sponsor. Some call it a mentor. Some call him friend. I called him dad. We all have different people that help us through those early stages that walk alongside us and take us through those fearful places and let us build ourselves back up and refortify in the new life that we live in, and then we move on. But it's our obligation to turn around with a 5-gallon bucket of gas or more, light a match, and burn that all to the ground, that past. It's a must. I think that we say that we want to do it, but in the actuality of it, we are not disciplined. We are lazy when it comes to getting rid of our past. Not all things in our past are bad. I think some things serve as monuments to keep us straight. But when we leave those lanes open to destruction, we leave that highway open, bomb it, get rid of it. Appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in tonight. This is a subject that really is something that we struggle with. It is massively important that you do an inventory of your situation and start to recollect, especially if you're going through a hard time right now. Or if you're just finding, man, how did I do it again? And you're on the upside and the other side. Take this time. Find the lanes that were wide open, those ports you kept plugged in that kept you connected to that web of destruction. Unplug them, burn them, get rid of it. Whatever measure you have to do to get rid of those options, do it so that you don't have that as an option, so you can make choices, even as fearful as they are, without that other destruction being the option, because otherwise you're more than likely going to fall back into those easier paths. It's just the way it works for us a lot of times. Between now and the next time we talk, please make progress on those things. Start assessing where your lanes are, because I'm almost, I would say with the highest degree of confidence that I could have, that if you're honest with yourself, you'll find very similar patterns of behavior that make you fall back. And those patterns of behavior need to be aggressively dealt with for you not to go back. And they're deceptive at times, so it will take work. do a full inventory, understand where you're standing, and make sure you're surrounded by a community of people that come alongside you and understand you, because they may be in a like situation, and you can carry each other on days when maybe you're not doing so strong. They can carry you, and when they're not doing so good, you can carry them. It's how it works. It's the importance of it. It's why it is that we need each other. Keep making progress on that path. And, between now and the time we talk again, please stay out of trouble.